はい、5秒前。4、3、2。
はい、OK です。よー、さあ。
A few weeks ago, we talked about Perfect Blue and the ideas of fiction and reality. It presents a very real and engaging look at the topic. There is no hard line between these two states. There is what becomes reality and what is left is fiction, and this changes from place to place, from time to time, and from person to person. It's important because being aware of the fluid nature of reality helps us avoid the pitfalls of the movie's characters. We're meant to learn from them. But teaching or preaching isn't something we want to sit through. And just because a series says something well, something important, doesn't mean it was a good series. Even a depressing philosophy addict like me can admit that entertainment is the goal of, well, entertainment. From the New World is a prominent look at this. The anime is still a great watch overall, but I can only give it at most a 7 out of 10 because even though it explores the construct of humanity in great detail and rewards the effort put into considering its themes and does so in a great and haunting way, it accomplishes this at times in ways that lack entertainment. The exposition dumps are long and heavy because knowledge is at odds with the world they live in. These kids are not supposed to know the truth and have few opportunities to, so this all needs to be learned at once. It even makes sense within the world, but it's not entertaining even if the concept and ideas behind it are engaging. Psycho-Pass, Fate Zero, and Monica Magica, 3 of my top anime from the same creator, even suffer from this to a degree. I think it's remedied because Uro Butcher is able to craft such likable characters that a half-episode conversation becomes entertaining as an exploration into who and why they are and feels entertaining in the way having a real conversation is. But even so, it still relies on throwing a lot at us at once. On complex, winding, long-winded, even more adjectives to make this sentence even longer to stress a point reveals. A movie doesn't have time for this. A movie doesn't have the luxury of an episode full of talking. This is why I don't often discuss movies. When I do, I'm usually struck by these same aspects. Ill-paced development, random plot notes that jump around, terrible villains and generic heroes, half-baked themes that almost feel insulting. Most movies I like are so because of their memorable moments and characters, not their deep and complex themes. So imagine my surprise when I thought more about Perfect Blue and how it remedied all of this. How it became the perfect movie. What is at its core and what it does so well is blurring the lines between fiction and reality. This is where its style comes from, its originality, its message. Everything centers around the inability to distinguish fiction and reality. So to understand why it's such a great movie is to understand how it achieved this. Let's begin. With two extremes, there are two baselines which first need to be created before anything else. It does this immediately in ways you might not even ever recognize. The movie's decision to open on these knockoff Power Rangers is more than just a funny establishing shot. I mean, actually, I guess the Power Rangers are knockoff Super Sentai, but that's not my topic. Mine is why that decision was made. This creates a clear-cut distinction right away. This is fiction. Even the children leaving the performance recognize and complain about this. It's lame, nothing at all like TV, because those are two different things, reality and fiction. Right away, we know the core of what this movie is about before we even see its main character. And when we do see her, we're showing how this line in the sand affects someone who's actually a part of it. We've seen the reaction of people who wanted to get lost in fiction already. How about the reaction of the people who make it, how it affects them? It's a lot less glamorous than it might look. CHAM is cobbled together in chaos and held together just long enough to perform. Their costumes are frayed, their hair is finished just before they go on, everyone is running around in a mess trying to gather the last bits needed. It's pure chaos. Making fiction is chaotic. Fiction is chaotic. But we'll see that none of this matters. They go out and give a flawless performance despite all of the chaos. At least nothing goes wrong of their own accord, but assholes are gonna asshole, I guess. But this high energy song and dance is constantly interrupted, and not from people in universe, but in how it's presented to us. It's cut off and replaced with inconspicuous clips of Mima shopping before returning and then being cut off once more. She's picking up milk and crossing the street, and then she's dancing, and then she's having a meeting with her agents. These simple things mixed in. As she goes onto the last song, we see her at home, quiet and alone. It jumps from the uproar of fans to the silence of her bed. She's just a modest idol living a modest life. There's no room to mistake this section of the movie, and that's important. It shows us fiction right next to boring, bland reality. But aren't there a few moments where things almost seem to bleed together? Let's look closer at the transitions. Mima's head turns in the first one, not quite matching exactly, but presenting the same motion in a distinct context. When it goes back, she walks towards the screen and then emerges again, almost as if she's walked through the screen and kept going. When we jump to her acting, she whips around off screen and we see her thrown down with a force in the scene she was acting out. Going back once more, she looks up in reality as the camera pans up in fiction. There's a line, the quick cuts make this distinct. But this is some subtle hints at what's going to happen to it. It's going to be crossed, it's going to be blurred, she's going to emerge from it. When I said this movie does everything all at once, I wasn't kidding. On the first watch, you see a clear barrier being established. You see some cheeky and interesting transitions that make you go, oh, that looks really nice. On a second or third watch, you see how it was always going to tear down that barrier. You see these little hints of foreshadowing. Perfect Blue is very good at this, at rewarding small bits of attention by making you wonder how it was possible not to see these things the first time. It makes you feel inattentive in all the right ways, a feeling very fitting with its theme of fiction versus reality. If you don't keep a sharp eye, how easily things can snowball. All the signs will be there and we won't even know. This foreshadowing even reinforces exactly what the movie is saying, and it's beautiful. But back to Mima at home. After a pretty lengthy period of opening fan letters and talking to her mom and feeding the fishes and these usual ordinary things, everything goes down a weirder path. Her fax machine starts to run, and this is what comes through. Traitor, 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 traitor. The score picks up a theme of haunting repetition that seems to almost match with the facts. As its sinister nature is revealed, the sounds of the machine grow, overtaking us in our senses. The camera zooms out of her window, fading to black just as we hear the line, "Who are you?" At first glance, I thought she was asking the sender. It seems to make sense, anyone would be curious, but it sounded a little bit off because it turns out she was asking no one. She's just rehearsing her single line for Double Bind, a syndicated drama her agents got her into. Maybe this is just me being dense, but the room for error here only makes it more fitting. Is that the sound of the fax machine growing louder in anxiety, or is that just the score? The moment of misconception on the target of her line, followed by the feeling of, oh, of course, it didn't really sound right anyway, of course she wasn't asking the sender. I think this is all really intended. It's when the barrier is starting to show its cracks in a noticeable way for the first time. They're really slim, almost imperceptible, you can just write them off and move on. But they're there. They start to unfocus our senses. For the first time, we have to wonder, not know for certain, which is real and which is fake, even if only the slightest bit. But that's all that's needed because much more will come. What comes next is what begins to freak me out even more though, as Perfect Blue begins the slow creep of terror in full. Not horror, not fear, but terror. The creeping feeling of the walls closing in, but so slow you'll never even notice. You'll just grow to get used to the feeling of being crushed. For a movie which isn't shy about going behind the scenes of a production, which the scene directly following the facts is, we see very little of Mima actually on camera right here despite the setting. There's microphones and directors and of course cameras and writers, but she's just kind of there, taking it all in, practicing her one line and wondering if it will sink or float her whole career. Eventually, after a quick letter bombing from her stalker, we do witness her scene. but not before seeing her on camera in a different way. Not literally, but in essence. In the middle of the first act and we witness from her, there is this scene where she sets up her computer and then visits the Mima's Room website mentioned in a fan letter. It starts off cute and funny. It reads like some harmless fun of some online fan who's gotten really good feel for who she is for their idol. It almost seems flattering, like a confirmation that her personality is unique or special enough to warrant such detail. But then it grows more odd. It's full of details no one should be able to know about her. How she always steps off the train with the left foot first out of superstition, what exactly she bought at the supermarket, her exact thoughts of her coworkers. Someone is watching her, someone is looking into Mima's room to make Mima's room. The camera, the one that we are presented with, pulls in closer each time it's on her. It makes itself known. She is not on camera here in universe. She will be in a moment, but this feels so much more like she's on camera at home than on set. And this shot, the way the curtain flows between us and her, the simple stare she has, completely unaware of our presence, how close it is to her face. This genuinely feels like watching her through the window. It feels like we, or at least the camera, are actually stalking Mima. And in case you thought that wasn't enough, we get the most blurred transition yet. The curtain pulls across and drops us into her scene on Double Bind. Now she is on camera, but it doesn't feel like it. It's not about her at all. Our main character is suddenly in the background saying one line and then just standing there static. The scene at home detached us from the equipment and crew. It put distance in our minds between the setup and the action itself. There's no countdown and go. It just is. Her reality is beginning to have the presentation of fiction, and her fiction is beginning to present like reality. This goes on literally as Double Bind does. We watch an extraneous moment of the show the minute that comes after Mima's line. Why? It adds nothing to the plot. It removes our main character even further from the spotlight. But it adds a lot to the feel, because that's the point. We assume this is TV, but we're watching TV in a movie. There's no way to actually know if the camera flash transition is in-universe, real, or fake. Especially after just seeing a creative transition with the curtain. Nothing is certain. It's not much, but I love that until we see this rewind, you can't say for certain if this is real or not. We're losing our grip. What was once certain with a terrible Super Sentai performance is now unclear with our main character. But don't let Perfect Blue's utter tension fool you. It's just as good at being downright horrific. It makes good fiction by feeling way too real. We move to the rape scene. Or rather, the rape scene in Double Bind in Perfect Blue. It's 2 layers away from reality, but fucking hell if it doesn't feel way too real, even with the pauses and the obvious presentation. This is the most it feels like a show, at least in physicality, because we see her on camera directly, a grace we didn't get in the last scene. The directors and writers are back, they're interacting with the performers, calling notes and changing setups. This is the most obvious the movie will ever be about Mima being in a production. And it doesn't matter one bit. It's long, it's uncomfortable, it's graphic, it's full of repeated screams and cries. It's hard to watch, and it just keeps going. For us, there is no wondering what is real and what is fake. There's only what we need to be fake. But this doesn't discard the fact that we can't be certain. It's not us who is under question here. It's Mima. Despite all the evidence we have, her eyes glaze over. She seems to disassociate, remembers herself as an idol, and we cut to once the scene is done. How much longer was it? How many takes was it? We don't know. And she probably doesn't either. We do not question fiction and reality for a moment. We question what Mima knows of fiction and reality. We confront her act. Is she really just that good at what she does? Or was it all just too much for her to handle? Where does the character end, and where does Mima begin? She has broken the border of fiction and reality. We can't easily assume either way anymore, and that means that we have broken the border of fiction and reality at the same exact time. We can only wait and see, a fact that makes Perfect Blue all the more terrifying. This legitimizes everything that follows. This slow destruction of fiction and reality allows the movie to happen without a question, allowing it to revel in confusion and obscurity because we are so confused and so unclear. It's so effective because every moment so far has been working to make it effective in ways that are so subtle and so natural. Transitions that seem like they're just cool effects, things that make you go, oh, that's really neat, and the movement of the camera and the order of the scenes. All these things you'll never notice but play a part in this. This movie is assembled perfectly. And it's not even done being so, because that's all well and good, but what do you do with all that? You have us, you have the main character questioning what is and isn't real, we are one and the same, but what now? You take it further. You take it to where fiction is meant to go, the extremes which we cannot witness as human beings in our real world, and allow us to explore ourselves in detail through those things. Mima starts to see another version of herself in her reflection, something we could never feel, and then it starts to come out of those reflections and into real life. It starts to affect the world around her as she chases it out of cars or down the street. Her scenes become the same as reality, the ones she's acting out. As the director calls out the take, we're transported not to the next attempt, but to different times and places. It's as if her life itself is the show, and they have to keep shooting the same scene, leading to her, in reality, having to keep shooting the same scene. The act is reality, and reality is the act. The line is erased, the barrier is torn down. Is Mima nothing more than an act? Is that all she ever was, even as an idol? And then if so, is Mima any less real than Mima? At least that one has confidence and speaks its mind and claims the truth for itself, so maybe it feels more real, maybe it knows. Perfect Blue mixes Mima into her role as an actor, and by doing so, doesn't just comment on fiction, it legitimizes those comments in the same exact breath. This is where I want to return to terror. When you're watching a horror movie, there's an easy pass on every scene which seems dangerous. It might spook you, it might jump out and scare you, but you can be certain the hero is going to survive. You can be sure they're aware of the situation and will manage it in some way. Perfect Blue is the most I've ever been worried while watching a movie, because there is no safeguard, there is no get out of jail free, the protagonist will be fine mantra. She has no idea what's real and fake. We have no idea what's real and fake. Everything could be anything. That is true terror, not something specific, but the complete lack of it. When you're left without logic and you have to rely on feeling alone, completely lost in the unknown. It's so fucked up, but I've watched the murder scene about 10 times in writing this video, sometimes back to back. It is the photographer who pushed her to take nude photos, an act she hated. This is him. But is this real? Is it a dream? Is it double bind? Are these images we see her just projecting herself onto the character and putting that rage into her acting and being a good actor? Her character is a murderer, a thought that gives comfort, followed by a deeper fear. It goes from, oh, it could be fake because of her character, to, but she has become her character. By making Mima fully lose her grip on reality, we're forced to feel the same anxiety. It's perfect. It feels like I'm saying the same thing over and over because I am. This whole movie is one huge long development of these core themes and plot points which are hand in hand, which are the same thing. God damn. But we're not done. Oh no. Because as Mima wakes up at home, sees her bloody clothes, and gets a call about his death, she thinks the only thought, did I? Was that real? Before this can even process, she's back on double bind, being told, you've just killed a man. The same dichotomy as before, relief and pain. Maybe she was just imagining the scene in a personal way, like I said, putting her own feelings into it to make it feel so real. Or maybe she'll snap and actually kill this man she's only supposed to be acting with. I was so afraid that's what was going to occur, that she would lose herself and commit murder before the whole cast and crew. because there's no way to know what's actually going on and what will happen next. And you know what makes this so awful? Just 30 minutes ago, we knew for certain. How fast that degradation is scary. How fast our entire sense of fiction and reality was able to be broken down and feel so natural is scary. And it's scary not in a movie way, but in a real way. Can we actually be influenced like that? Can our senses in the real world change that quickly? When I think back to the worst moments of my life, the times where I've been the most emotionally vulnerable, it feels like it can degrade that quickly. Not many movies, not many stories in general, even books with hundreds of pages are able to mirror your own mental state to that of a character so well. We can feel their emotions, say sadness at a loss or joy at love, but to be exactly in their shoes, even when their situation is an impossibility of our world, how is that even possible to create? How was a movie and the team behind it this fucking good? And we're not even at the end. We haven't even reached the peak of fiction. Just before we do, it seems as if we've been saved. The same scene is played twice, one of Mima and one of her character. They're indistinguishable as they essentially admit everything we've covered so far, that they no longer know reality, save the few words they describe themselves with, whether it's model or actor or whatever that be. But Double Bind is over after that scene. It's done. That was the last scene. She'd ever have to shoot for it. The team claps because the performance has ended. Finally, a marker of reality. Finally, something to cling to. But there's a stalker. He finds Mima, pins her down on the exact stage where her character was once raped, and attempts to do the same. A not so subtle inclusion, the one who's claiming to know reality is actually making it closer to fiction. This is where falsehoods now find her, capture her, and try to consume her in full. He is a man lost in fiction. He believes Mima was an idol and that is all. She could never be an actress who poses nude, someone so impure. The real Mima has contacted him, she believes in him, and he must kill for her. He lives in falsehoods. He is fiction trying to kill her, telling her she isn't real. The extreme itself has caught up to us, given physical form. We have reached the other end from those initial shots. This is the natural conclusion of the cheesy performance which fooled no one. We're at the end with no line between the two. The point fiction is directly attacking reality. And she kills it. She kills him. She kills fiction when it assaults her in full force. She has proven that she can fight. It's over. It's finally over. The barrier is back up. The line is redrawn. But only for her. Rumi, one of her managers, finds Mima and assists her after this experience. Justifiably worn out, Mima falls asleep in her car and wakes up in her room in another very smooth transition. It makes things feel a bit odd again. She looks around, but it's exactly as it was. She's not being watched, her CHAM poster is right there where it was, her fish are alive just like they were. But that's not right. This isn't Mima's room, this is Mima's room. The actor may have torn down the poster, but the idol didn't. The actor accidentally let her fish die, but the idol didn't. She opens the window and it's not her view. Then, emerging behind her is Mima. Once again, god damn it, fiction has come back to haunt her. But look closely at the mirror. Just a moment before we see the truth, before it's revealed to us directly, a reflection, once the very thing which presented fiction to her, now presents reality. Mima is actually Rumi. She became obsessed with her client and couldn't handle the image swap. So she created the website and emailed the stalker. She became another case of fiction overtaking reality and seeks to remedy the errors such a thing causes. There are two Mimas to her, and there needs to only be one. Our main character has to fight once more a bloody battle of life and death. She has to fight two fights because there are two fights. She has to deal not just with others, but with herself, the idea of her that has plagued her mind so much. Fighting the stalker was one half of this, rejecting the fiction placed on her by others. But Rumi brings the surrealism back into focus, a contrast to the brutal realism of the previous confrontation. This one is once again whimsical and odd because Mima is fighting both another and herself here. She is confronting the full issue of fiction, not just its consequences. At least once she's cornered, she does. For a while, she simply runs, and somehow Rumi keeps up, presented as floating behind Mima, a literal, inescapable doppelganger. To take this very literally, you can't run from this issue. It will catch you, it must be fought and confronted directly. Even if it makes no sense, it will persist until we, the observer and thus the creator of the only reality we know, tackle that reality in full. The theme of Perfect Blue states that reality is a choice, and then it says we have to make that choice. Perfect Blue isn't just pulling a dramatic reveal for shock factor and memorability. It's reaching the only conclusion which fits with what we've seen. It's completing itself as Mima fights off Rumi. But there is still uncertainty here. Mima saves Rumi, we see the manager as her still, so there's more that needs to be said. We ultimately get our true final scene. It once again returns to a sense of exact knowledge, of certainty in the world. Mima, now later and now a famous actress, validating her decisions and herself, comes to visit Rumi in a mental hospital. Still believing herself to be the idol, she paces around the room, lost. But it causes no confusion, it presents confusion clear and simple. It takes what was once shown so odd and so whimsical and breaks it down to what it was. Insanity. There is no question. Mima fought fiction and saved herself. Literally, saving herself from being hit by a truck. And if that wasn't clear enough, as Mima leaves, she looks in the mirror of her car and states, matter of fact, I'm the real one. There is no interpretation. There is fact and there is fiction. The reflections which once lied to us can no more, because Mima isn't willing to be lied to anymore. She has made the choice of reality. She's aware of it and sticks in it. The things that once tricked us hold no power anymore. We haven't had an arc, we've made a circle and returned to the start, but stronger, with a clear message and a clear idea. Be aware of the line, find it and guard it. Don't lose yourself to fiction. You are the only real you. Perfect Blue began clear, clouded itself in confusion to develop a deeply engaging, entertaining, and fucked up story to then break down its own development for a clear and concise message. It did it so naturally, so minimalistically, even with all the chaos and style. It had contrast and a unique nature to set itself apart in everything which is so good that we've covered. It is bold and perfect and completely respectable in making a clear, exact statement. The interpretation of art is a big deal. For many, it's the very point of art. We witness it and then give it meaning. This is true and important and a great thing. Surreal media itself is the perfect example of this. It's a story which allows you to connect with it in any way, and that makes it an amazing story. By not being clear, it allows us the chance to create our own clarity, to find a bit of ourselves in a mess. That's insight, and I love insight. It's why I do this. But to say my favorite sentence, this holds within it no inherent morality. A story which is anything holds both positive and negative insight. When presented with literal monsters like in Perfect Blue, an unclear ending can be an ending on the side of evil. So Mima kills the monsters. She makes a direct statement to us to dispel any possibility of evil. Some art, and stories in particular, usually deserve an ending, something definitive which makes a statement. It's an act of collaboration still, because the author makes their point clear, and then we are either swayed or unswayed by it. We test our convictions against the evidence they have presented us with, and we grow from that. There is value to rigidity in art in that way, to give your story a definitive ending in a clear message. And it's bold. Ending a movie on a single line in a boring scene after making a name for itself by being obscure and odd and downright insane is much more brave than an avant-garde one. Sometimes vagueness and obscurity is not a creator being generous and giving us a chance to be part of the art. Sometimes it's just them being afraid. It's just them wanting to sound smart and wanting to have attention, to make something which has no ending, so we have to interpret it and there's no right answer and discussion continues forever. I know because I've done that many times in my videos. I could have just said vagueness is not good or bad. Instead I said this holds within it no inherent morality. I don't think this is always bad. After all, we enjoy a good show, the pomp and circumstance of flowery language. It can be as much of the story as the plot itself. But we have to decide when plain English is best. Perfect Blue did that. It took a leap, did 17 flips, and still stuck the landing. It is the best anime movie I've ever seen. Maybe the best movie. I hope I was able to make clear why I say that here today. I don't normally do technical analysis anymore, but it's damn fun for something this good. So let me know if you want to see more of this technical look at series. If there's any that I feel are really strong, I'll definitely be down to do this again, because to me, personally, it's also a good guide of how to create a good story for myself one day, at least in a little bit. But I can feel myself starting to ramble, so I'll mention the other video I did in this topic, which dives more into the thematics which are developed from these technical aspects. But I'm going to mention 3 important links in the pinned comment. There's Twitter, where there's updates on videos and things, Discord, where we hang out and have cool conversations, and Patreon, where these lovely people above me right now support me directly and help me do this thing I love. I don't know why I'm talking fast, but they're really kind and great. But everyone just spending some time here is as well. So I'll say thank you for watching, and I hope I'll see you again soon.